Pass the salt, Valerie, and try not to drop it this time. Grace's voice cut across the mahogany dining table like a blade wrapped in silk. I reached for the crystal shaker, my fingers steady despite the familiar sting of her words. Around me, the Mason family continued their dinner as if nothing had happened, because to them, nothing had. My name is Valerie, and for 8 years, I've been the ghost at this table. Did you see Margaret's daughter got into Harvard? Olivia announced, her fork pausing mid-air as she delivered what I knew was a calculated blow. Such an accomplished young woman really makes you think about what we pass down to the next generation, doesn't it? Mason cleared his throat but said nothing. He never said anything anymore. Some people are born with drive, Kent added, cutting his steak with surgical precision. Others, well, they find their purpose in supporting those who do. I smiled and took a sip of wine. How lovely for Margaret. Grace's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Oh, Valerie, always so pleasant. Tell me, what did you accomplish today? Besides the grocery shopping, of course. I organized the charity auction materials for your event next week. I kept my voice level, though my free hand found the small locket at my throat, my grandmother's locket, the only thing in this house that truly belonged to me. How domestic of you, Olivia smirked. Though I suppose someone has to handle the busy work while the rest of us focus on the important things. The chandelier above us cast everything in golden light, making the scene look like something from a magazine spread. Perfect family in perfect home with perfect lives, if only they knew. Speaking of important things, Kent said, dabbing his mouth with his napkin. The club dues are coming up again. Substantial increase this year, but maintaining our standing is worth every penny. Absolutely, Grace agreed. Image is everything. People judge you by the company you keep, the places you're seen. It's about legacy. Mason finally spoke. The renovation on the east wing should be finished next month. The contractors say it'll add significant value to the property. Wonderful, I said, though nobody was really talking to me. They were talking around me, through me, as if I were a piece of furniture that occasionally needed to be acknowledged. You know, Valerie, Grace continued, her tone shifting to something that might have sounded motherly to an outsider, I was thinking it might be time for you to consider contributing more to the household, financially speaking. The room went quiet except for the soft clink of silverware against china. I mean, she continued, you've been so comfortable here for so many years. Perhaps it's time to think about earning your keep in a more substantial way. Olivia giggled. Maybe she could get a job at the grocery store. She spends enough time there. Now, Kent said, though his eyes held the same cruel amusement as his daughter's. I'm sure Valerie has skills we haven't discovered yet. Hidden talents, perhaps. I set down my wine glass and looked around the table. Mason was studying his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Olivia was barely containing her laughter. Grace and Kent wore matching expressions of benevolent condescension. Hidden talents, I repeated softly. Yes, I suppose I do have a few of those. Well, we'd love to hear about them sometime, Grace said with false sweetness. When you're ready to share, of course. The conversation moved on to other topics. The upcoming charity gala, Kent's golf tournament, Olivia's latest shopping expedition to New York. I listened and nodded and played my part, the grateful wife who'd married above her station and should be thankful for the crumbs of acceptance thrown her way. But as I sat there, my fingers working the clasp of my grandmother's locket, I thought about secrets, about hidden talents, about the phone calls I'd been having with Evan, my childhood friend who managed certain financial arrangements for me. You know what? Grace said suddenly, as if struck by inspiration. I think it's almost time for our dear Valerie to really earn her place at this table. The way she said it made my blood run cold. Not because I was afraid, but because I recognized the tone. It was the same one she'd used before every other humiliation she'd orchestrated over the years. Mason's hand tightened around his fork, and for just a moment, our eyes met across the table. In that instant, I saw something that looked almost like guilt. Almost, but not quite enough to matter. The next morning, Grace cornered me in the kitchen while I was loading the dishwasher. "Valerie, darling, we need to discuss the arrangements for Saturday's gathering." I looked up from the crystal glasses I was carefully placing in the rack. "Of course. What can I do to help?" "Well, it's quite a special occasion. Kent's business associates will be there, along with some very important families from the club." She paused, studying her manicured nails. "We need everything to be absolutely perfect." "I understand." "Do you?" Her voice sharpened slightly. "Because this isn't just any dinner party. These are people who matter, Valerie. People who can make or break reputations with a single conversation." Mason walked in, already dressed for work in his expensive suit. He kissed Grace's cheek but barely glanced at me. "Morning, Mother. Everything set for Saturday?" "Just going over the details with Valerie." Grace's smile was razor-thin, making sure she understands how crucial this evening is for our family. "Good." Mason poured himself coffee from the machine I'd prepared earlier. "The Hendersons will be there, and potentially the Blackwells. We can't afford any missteps." The way he said it made it clear who he expected those missteps to come from. "I'll make sure everything runs smoothly," I said quietly. "See that you do." Mason headed for the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Valerie, wear something appropriate. Not that blue dress you wore to the Whitmans' party." After he left, Grace lingered in the kitchen, watching me finish the dishes. "You know, dear, I've been thinking about our conversation last night, about you contributing more meaningfully to this family." My hands stilled on the plate I was drying. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, Saturday's gathering might be the perfect opportunity to discuss your future role here." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Kent has some ideas about how you might better serve the family's interests." Before I could respond, Olivia breezed in wearing yoga clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Are we talking about Valerie's big moment?" She grabbed a green smoothie from the fridge. "This is going to be so interesting." "What big moment?" I asked. Olivia and Grace exchanged a look that made my stomach clench. "Oh, nothing too dramatic," Grace said airily. "Just a little clarification of expectations. You'll see." They left me standing in the kitchen, my mind racing. I pulled out my phone and saw a text from Evan. "Coffee later, we should talk." I typed back quickly. "Can't today, family stuff, but soon." His response came immediately. "Everything okay? You sound stressed." I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing, "Just the usual Mason family drama. I'll call you after Saturday." "Ready when you are," he replied, and something about those 4 words sent a chill down my spine. That afternoon, I found myself in the attic, going through old photo albums. There was one from our wedding, Mason and me looking so young and hopeful. His family stood behind us in the photos, all smiles for the camera, but I remembered how Grace had whispered to Kent during the reception, "Well, at least she's pretty enough. Hopefully she'll learn her place quickly." I'd thought she was joking then. The sound of voices downstairs pulled me from my memories. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. "Everything's arranged for Saturday," Kent was saying. "Helen will have the papers ready." "And you're sure this is the right approach?" That was Mason, sounding uncertain. "Son, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions for the good of the family," Kent replied. "We've been more than generous, but generosity has its limits." "What if she refuses?" Olivia's voice carried up the stairs. "She won't," Grace said confidently. "Where would she go? What would she do? She has nothing without us." "Still, we should be prepared for resistance," Kent added. "That's why we're doing this publicly. Harder to make a scene when there are witnesses." My blood turned to ice. Whatever they were planning for Saturday, it wasn't going to be pleasant. I spent the rest of the week watching them, the hushed conversations that stopped when I entered a room, the way Mason avoided eye contact, the satisfied smirks Olivia kept throwing my way. Friday night, as I was arranging flowers for the next day's event, my phone buzzed. Evan, last chance to talk before your big family gathering. Something's got you spooked. I looked around the empty dining room, at the perfectly set table, at the life I'd built that was apparently about to come crashing down. Tomorrow night, I typed back. After everything's over, I have a feeling things are about to change. Ready when you are, came his reply again. This time those words felt like a promise. Saturday's dinner party went perfectly. Too perfectly. The guests praised the food, complimented the decor, and made all the right noises about what a lovely home we had. I played my part, the gracious hostess who smiled and nodded and made sure everyone's wine glass stayed full. But I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, going through the motions while waiting for the other shoe to drop. Valerie, dear, Grace appeared at my elbow as I was clearing dessert plates. Could you join us in Kent's study? There's something we need to discuss. My hands didn't shake as I set down the plates. Of course. Let me just... Now, please. Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I followed her down the hallway, past the family portraits that had never included me, toward Kent's study. The door was already open, and I could see people inside. The family was there, Kent behind his massive desk, Mason standing by the window, Olivia perched on the leather sofa with her phone in her hand. But there were others too. A woman I didn't recognize sat in one of the chairs, a briefcase open beside her. A man with a notary stamp waited nearby. Valerie, come in, Kent said, his voice unusually formal. I'd like you to meet Helen, our family attorney. The woman stood and extended her hand. Mrs. Mason, I've heard so much about you. I shook her hand, my eyes scanning the room. Everyone looked nervous except Olivia, who was practically vibrating with excitement. Please sit down, Helen gestured to the chair across from her. I remained standing. What's this about? Kent cleared his throat. Well, Valerie, as you know, this family has certain responsibilities, obligations to maintain our standing, our legacy. Okay. And sometimes, Grace added, moving to stand beside her husband, difficult decisions must be made to protect what we've built. Helen opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Mrs. Mason, we need you to sign these documents. What are they? A relinquishment of your marital rights to this property, Helen said matter-of-factly. In the event of divorce or separation, you would have no claim to the family home or its contents. The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the room, at Kent's satisfied expression, at Grace's cold smile, at Mason who was staring out the window like a coward. You want me to sign away my rights to my own home? It's not really your home, though, is it? Olivia piped up, her phone now openly recording. I mean, you didn't pay for it. You didn't earn it. Olivia, Mason said sharply, but he still wouldn't look at me. What? It's true. She shrugged. We're just protecting family assets. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal? I laughed, and the sound was bitter even to my own ears. You ambush me with lawyers and notaries after a dinner party, and it's nothing personal? Valerie, Kent's voice was patronizing, you're being dramatic. This is simply a precautionary measure. Good families protect their wealth. Their wealth, I repeated slowly. Yes, Grace said firmly. Mason's inheritance, the family trust, generations of careful planning. We can't have it all disappear because of unfortunate circumstances. Helen pushed the papers toward me. If you could just sign here and initial there. I looked down at the documents, pages and pages of legal language, but the meaning was crystal clear. They wanted me to have nothing, to be nothing. And if I refuse? The room went silent. Kent and Grace exchanged a look. Well, Kent said slowly, that would be unfortunate. for everyone involved. People might start asking questions, Grace added, about why you're being so unreasonable, about what you might be hiding. Are you threatening me? We're protecting our family, Kent said, by any means necessary. Mason finally turned from the window. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly. Valerie, please, just sign the papers. It doesn't have to be difficult. I stared at my husband, this man I'd loved, supported, stood by for 8 years. The man who was now asking me to sign away my security, my future, my dignity. You're not going to defend me, are you? I asked him quietly. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence was answer enough. I walked over to the desk and picked up the pen. The room held its collective breath. You know what? I said, looking around at their expectant faces. Thank you. Thank you? Grace frowned. Yes, I signed my name with a flourish on every page, every line, every initial. Thank you for finally showing me exactly who you all are. I set the pen down and smiled at their confused expressions. This has been incredibly clarifying. Helen gathered the papers quickly. Well, that's all we need. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Grace, you're absolutely right about one thing. Good families do protect their wealth. The look of triumph on her face made what was coming next even sweeter. I went straight to my bedroom and locked the door. My hands were steady as I pulled out my laptop and opened my email. The cursor blinked in the empty message field. I typed Evan's address and paused, my fingers hovering over the keys. Then I wrote, "It's time. Dissolve everything. Transfer it all to the new account we discussed. Do it tonight." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My phone rang within minutes. "Val, are you sure about this?" Evan's voice was concerned but not surprised. We'd talked about this possibility for months. "I'm sure." What happened? I told him about the ambush, the papers, the lawyers, about Mason's silence and Olivia's smirking phone recording. Jesus, Val, I'm sorry. Don't be. You warned me this might happen eventually. I did, but I hoped I was wrong. He paused. You know there's no going back from this, right? Once I dissolve the trust. I know. The family will lose everything, the house payments, the club memberships, Olivia's credit cards, Kent's business expenses. All of it was coming from your grandmother's trust. I know, I repeated. They have no idea, do they? I laughed and it felt good. None whatsoever. How long do you want me to give them? How long will it take for everything to bounce? The automatic payments will start failing Monday morning. Credit cards will be declined by Tuesday. The club will probably call about overdue fees by Wednesday. Perfect. Val, Evan's voice was gentle. Are you okay? Really? I looked around the bedroom I'd shared with Mason for 8 years, at the photos on the dresser of happier times that now felt like lies, at the jewelry box full of gifts that were probably bought with my own money. I'm better than okay, Evan. I'm free. After we hung up, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in the kitchen. The house was quiet. The family had probably gone to celebrate their victory with expensive brandy in Kent's study. My laptop chimed with email notifications, confirmations from the bank, transfer receipts, account closures, $43 million, moving from one account to another with a few clicks. My grandmother's fortune, carefully invested and grown over the years, finally coming home to me. I thought about the day she died, how she'd gripped my hand with surprising strength. Promise me something, Valerie, she'd whispered. Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. The money is yours, but keep it secret until you're sure who deserves your trust. I promise, Grandma. And if anyone ever tries to make you feel small, remember, you have the power to choose your own path. I'd kept that promise for 5 years. Through every snide comment, every dismissive look, every moment of being treated like hired help in my own home. My phone buzzed with a text from Mason. "Where are you? Come have a drink with us." I typed back, "I'm tired. Going to bed early. Don't be upset about tonight. It's just business." Just business. 8 years of marriage reduced to a business transaction. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop again and started making lists. Things I'd need to do, places I'd need to go, people I'd need to call. My new life was going to require planning. Around midnight, I heard Mason come upstairs. He tried the bedroom door, found it locked. "Val, come on, open up." I didn't answer. "Look, I know tonight was difficult, but you have to understand, my family has expectations, responsibilities." Still nothing from me. "We can talk about this tomorrow, okay? When you've had time to process everything." His footsteps retreated down the hall toward the guest room. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. In a few hours, the sun would rise on a very different world for the Mason family. My phone lit up with one final message from Evan. "It's done. All accounts closed, trust dissolved, funds transferred. Sweet dreams, Val." I smiled in the darkness and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. Sunday morning, I woke up early and made coffee. The house was still quiet, the family probably sleeping off their celebration from the night before. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, watching the morning news, waiting. At 8:47 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mrs. Mason? This is David from First National Bank. I'm calling about some irregularities with your family's accounts." I smiled and took a sip of my coffee. "I'm sorry, but you'll need to speak with my husband about that. This is his family's business, not mine." The show was about to begin. By Monday morning, the cracks were already showing. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when Olivia stormed in, still in her pajamas, waving her phone like a weapon. "My card got declined at Starbucks. Do you know how embarrassing that is?" Grace appeared behind her, fully dressed but looking frazzled. "The bank called 3 times this morning, something about insufficient funds, which is ridiculous." Mason rushed in, already dressed for work, his tie crooked. "Has anyone seen my briefcase? I can't find—" He stopped when he saw his mother and sister. "What's wrong?" "Everything's wrong," Olivia snapped. "My credit cards aren't working, Mom's having issues with the bank, and the automatic payment for my car lease bounced." "That's impossible," Mason said, but his voice wavered. "I'll call the bank." "I already did," Grace said sharply. "They want to speak with you immediately, something about the trust account." I continued scrambling eggs, keeping my expression neutral. "Trust account?" "The family trust," Kent said, walking in with the morning paper. His usual confident demeanor was cracked around the edges. "There seems to be some sort of technical error." "Technical error?" Mason grabbed his phone. "I'm calling them right now." He dialed, pacing the kitchen while it rang. "Yes, this is Mason. I need to speak with someone about our accounts immediately." "What do you mean closed?" "That's impossible." "No, I'll be right there." He hung up, his face pale. "They want to see us, all of us. This morning." "This is ridiculous," Grace said, but I caught the tremor in her voice. "We've banked with them for 30 years. Maybe it's just a computer glitch," Olivia said, though she didn't sound convinced. Kent folded his newspaper with sharp, angry movements. "Computer glitch or not, we need answers, and we need them now." The phone rang again. Mason answered it immediately. "Hello? What? No, that can't be right. Yes, I understand. We'll be in touch." He hung up and looked around the room with growing panic. "That was Rory from the club. Our membership dues are 3 months overdue. He says if we don't pay by Friday, they're suspending our membership." 3 months? Grace's voice pitched higher. "That's impossible. The payments are automatic." "Apparently not anymore," Mason said grimly. I plated the eggs and set them on the counter. Anyone want breakfast? They all stared at me like I'd suggested we have a picnic during a hurricane. How can you think about food right now? Olivia demanded. Because getting upset won't fix whatever's wrong with your accounts, I said calmly. You should probably get to the bank. You're coming with us, Kent said firmly. Why? You made it very clear on Saturday that family finances aren't my concern. Don't be difficult, Valerie, Grace snapped. This affects all of us. Does it? I took a bite of my eggs. I signed away my rights to everything, remember? This is your family's business now. Mason stared at me with something that might have been suspicion. Valerie, what do you know about this? About what? Your banking problems? Nothing at all. Then why are you being so calm? I shrugged. What's the point of panicking? Either it's a mistake that can be fixed, or it's not. Getting hysterical won't change anything. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Mason went to answer it, returning with a nervous-looking young man in a suit. This is James from the bank, Mason said. He wanted to speak with us in person. James clutched a folder to his chest. I'm sorry to bother you at home, but given the unusual circumstances, my manager thought it would be best to handle this delicately. What unusual circumstances? Kent demanded. Well, sir, it appears that all of your accounts were funded by a single trust, and that trust was dissolved over the weekend. The kitchen went dead silent. Dissolved? Grace's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Mom. The trust holder exercised their right to terminate the arrangement and transfer all assets to a different account. Who? Mason's voice was hoarse. Who was the trust holder? James opened his folder and consulted a document. The trust was established by Eleanor Kelly in 2018, with full control granted to her heir upon her death. The current holder is... He looked up. Valerie Kelly Mason. You could have heard a pin drop. All eyes turned to me. I finished my eggs and set down my fork. Oh, I said pleasantly. I guess that would be me. Olivia's phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. You? Mason stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Apparently so. But how? Grace stammered. I stood up and rinsed my plate in the sink. Well, I suppose we should all go to the bank and sort this out, shouldn't we? The look of dawning horror on their faces was everything I'd hoped it would be. The bank manager's office felt like a funeral parlor. We sat in a semicircle of leather chairs while Mr. Peterson spread documents across his mahogany desk like he was dealing cards. As I explained over the phone, Peterson said, adjusting his glasses, the Eleanor Kelly Trust was the sole funding source for all Mason family accounts. Kent leaned forward, his knuckles white as he gripped his chair arms. That's impossible. Our family has had wealth for generations. Peterson pulled out a thick file. I'm afraid the records show otherwise, Mr. Mason. Every mortgage payment, every credit line, every investment account, all funded by transfers from the Kelly Trust. How much? Mason's voice cracked. The trust held approximately $43 million before its dissolution. Grace made a strangled sound. Olivia just stared at the ceiling like she was praying. And this trust belonged to... Peterson looked at me. Mrs. Mason's grandmother? That's correct, I said quietly. You knew? Mason turned to me, his face a mask of betrayal and shock. All this time you knew? I knew my grandmother left me money, yes. $43 million, Olivia shrieked. You've been sitting on $43 million While you what? I asked calmly. While you called me worthless? While you made me sign away my rights to my own home? Your home? Kent's voice was dangerous. That house belongs to this family. Peterson cleared his throat. Actually, sir, the mortgage payments came directly from the trust. Technically, Mrs. Mason has been paying for the house for the past 5 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Show them, I said to Peterson. He pulled out another stack of papers. These are the payment records: mortgage, property taxes, insurance, utilities, club memberships, credit card payments, car leases, even grocery bills, all paid through automatic transfers from the Kelly Trust. Grace's face had gone completely white. The club memberships? Yes, ma'am, the country club, the yacht club, the tennis club, all funded by the trust. My car? Olivia whispered. Lease payments, insurance, maintenance, all trust funded. Mason looked like he was going to be sick. The business expenses, the client dinners, the office rent? All of it, Peterson confirmed. Kent stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is some kind of mistake. Our family has money, real money, investments, properties. Sir, I've been your family's banker for 15 years. Without the trust transfers, your combined assets total approximately $12,000 in checking accounts. 12,000? Grace's voice was barely audible. That's not possible, Mason stammered. The inheritance from my grandfather, the family investments, were liquidated years ago to cover debts, Peterson said gently. The trust transfers began shortly after Mrs. Mason joined the family. They've been your primary source of income ever since. I watched their faces as the truth sank in. The horror, the disbelief, the dawning realization that everything they thought they knew about their lives was a lie. Why? Mason turned to me, his eyes pleading. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what? That I was paying for everything while you treated me like hired help? That I was funding your lifestyle while you called me worthless? We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said firmly. You were happy to take the money as long as you could pretend it came from somewhere else. Peterson pulled out a new checkbook and slid it across the desk to me. Mrs. Mason, your new account is active. Would you like to discuss your options going forward? I picked up the checkbook, feeling its weight. What are my options? Well, you could reinstate the trust, establish new payment arrangements, or... He paused delicately. You could maintain complete control over your assets. Complete control, I repeated. Yes, the money is yours to do with as you please. Grace suddenly lurched forward. Valerie, please, we can work this out. We're family. Are we? I looked around the room. Because on Saturday night, you made it very clear that I'm not really part of this family. That was a mistake, Kent said quickly. A misunderstanding. Was it? Because Olivia recorded the whole thing on her phone. Would you like me to refresh your memory about what you all said? Olivia's face flushed red. I deleted that video. Did you? Because I'm pretty sure it automatically backed up to the cloud. Mason reached for my hand. Val, please. We can fix this. We can make this right. I pulled my hand away. Can you make right 8 years of treating me like I was nothing? Can you undo Saturday night? We'll do anything, Grace said desperately. Anything you want. I stood up, clutching the checkbook. What I want is for you to understand what it feels like to have nothing, to be nothing, to depend on someone else's charity. Peterson cleared his throat. Mrs. Mason, shall I close the remaining accounts? I looked at each of them. Kent with his broken pride, Grace with her desperate fear, Olivia with her shattered entitlement, and Mason with his pathetic pleading. Yes, I said quietly. Close them all. The sound Olivia made was barely human. Valerie, you can't do this, Mason said, standing up. You can't destroy our entire family over one mistake. One mistake? I laughed. This wasn't one mistake, Mason. This was 8 years of mistakes. 8 years of you letting them treat me like garbage while I paid for everything. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and the house? The one you made me sign away my rights to? The mortgage is 3 months behind as of today. You have 30 days before foreclosure proceedings begin. I left them sitting there in their expensive clothes, in their borrowed lives, finally understanding what they'd lost and what they'd never really had to begin with. They followed me out of the bank like lost children. Valerie, wait! Mason caught up to me in the parking lot. We need to talk about this. I kept walking toward my car, the modest Honda I'd bought with my own small savings account, not the luxury vehicles they drove that I'd apparently been paying for. There's nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about? Grace's voice was shrill behind me. You just destroyed our entire family. I turned around to face them. All four of them stood there in their designer clothes, looking like their world had just ended, which I suppose it had. I destroyed your family? Really? You know what I mean? Grace snapped, but her usual venom was replaced by panic. No, I don't think I do. Explain it to me. Kent stepped forward, trying to summon his old authority. Valerie, you're being vindictive. This isn't like you. Isn't it? How would you know what I'm like? You've spent 8 years treating me like furniture. That's not true, Mason said weakly. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone. Should I play Olivia's video from Saturday night? The one where you all made it crystal clear what you think of me? I told you, I deleted that. Olivia's voice cracked. From your phone, maybe, but cloud storage is forever. I held up my phone. Would you like to hear Grace calling me a simple housewife with no ambition, or Kent explaining how I need to earn my keep? We were protecting family assets, Kent said desperately. Whose assets, Kent? Because apparently they were my assets all along. Mason grabbed my arm. Val, please, I love you. We can work through this. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. You love me? You love me so much that you stood there silent while your family humiliated me? You love me so much that you asked me to sign away my security? I was trying to keep the peace. You were being a coward. I shook off his grip. You've been a coward for 8 years, Mason. Every time they insulted me, every time they dismissed me, every time they made me feel small, you said nothing. I didn't know about the money. The money doesn't matter. My voice rose, and I saw other people in the parking lot turning to look. This isn't about money, Mason. This is about respect. This is about how you let your family treat your wife. Grace stepped closer, her mask of superiority finally cracking. Valerie, please. We made mistakes, but we're family. Families forgive each other. Are we family, Grace? Because on Saturday you made it very clear that I'm not really a Mason, that I don't belong, that I'm just some charity case you've been tolerating. That's not what we meant. That's exactly what you meant. I looked at each of them. You want to know the truth? I've been waiting for this moment for years, waiting for you to push me too far, waiting for you to show your true colors. You planned this, Kent said, his voice filled with dawning horror. I prepared for it. There's a difference. I smiled coldly. My grandmother warned me about people like you, people who would take advantage of my kindness and mistake it for weakness. Your grandmother, Olivia spat. That bitter old woman poisoned you against us from the beginning. My grandmother was the only person who ever truly loved me. Unlike this family, she wanted me to be strong, to stand up for myself. So, you're going to let us lose everything? Mason's voice broke. The house? The club memberships? Everything we've worked for? Everything you've worked for? I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. Mason, you haven't worked for anything in 8 years. None of you have. You've been living off my inheritance while treating me like I was worthless. We'll change, Grace said desperately. We'll treat you better. We'll include you more. Include me in what? In my own life? In decisions about my own money? I shook my head. It's too late for that, Grace. Please, Mason whispered. Don't do this. Don't destroy us. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I'd married, the man I'd loved, the man who'd stood by and watched his family tear me apart piece by piece. I'm not destroying you, Mason. I'm just stopping the payments. If that destroys you, maybe you should ask yourself what you built your life on. I got in my car and rolled down the window. Oh, and one more thing. I'm filing for divorce. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot like survivors of a natural disaster, finally understanding that their perfect world had been built on sand, and that the tide had finally come in. The coffee shop was busy, filled with the usual Tuesday morning crowd. I sat in the corner booth, watching Evan approach with 2 lattes and a satisfied grin. So, he said, sliding into the seat across from me, I heard the Mason house went into foreclosure yesterday. Did it? I sipped my coffee, trying to look innocent. Don't play coy with me, the whole town's talking about it. Kent Mason working at the hardware store, Grace cleaning houses, Olivia moved back in with her parents. He leaned forward. How does it feel? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Aunt Valerie? It's Hazel. Can we talk? I showed Evan the screen. Mason's niece. She's 17. The one who was always nice to you? The only one. I typed back. Of course. When and where? Now? I'm outside the coffee shop. I looked up and saw her through the window, tall, awkward, clutching a backpack like a lifeline. She looked nothing like the rest of the Mason family. There was something genuine about her that they'd never managed to crush. Send her in, I told Evan. Hazel approached our table nervously, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. Hi, Valerie. She glanced at Evan uncertainly. This is Evan, my friend. You can talk freely. I gestured to the empty chair. Sit. She perched on the edge of the seat like she might bolt at any moment. I wanted to apologize. For my family. For everything they did to you. Hazel, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Her voice was stronger now. I was there Saturday night. I saw what they did. It was horrible. Evan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I tried to tell my mom it was wrong, but she said I didn't understand family business. Hazel's hands twisted in her lap. But I do understand. They treated you terribly, and you were paying for everything the whole time. How much do you know? Everything. Mom's been crying for days, talking about how we're going to lose the house, how I might not be able to go to college. She looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of Mason when I first met him, before his family poisoned him. But that's not your fault. That's theirs. What do you want from me, Hazel? Nothing. The answer came quickly, firmly. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family is like them. And I wanted to ask, when you're ready, if maybe we could still be friends. Not because of money or anything like that. Just because I always liked you. Something tight in my chest loosened. I'd like that. Really? Really, but I have one condition. Her face fell. What? You have to promise me you won't let them turn you into them. Don't let their bitterness poison you. I won't. I'm going to community college in the fall, getting my own job, my own life. She smiled for the first time since sitting down. I don't want to be like them. After Hazel left, Evan studied my face. You're not done, are you? What do you mean? The revenge. You could have destroyed them completely, but you didn't. You left them with just enough to survive. I thought about it. I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted them to understand what it feels like to have nothing, to depend on others, to be dismissed and looked down on. And now? Now they know. I pulled out my phone and showed him a news article. Local family loses fortune in trust dispute. The photo showed Kent in his hardware store apron, looking defeated. The whole town knows their perfect life was built on someone else's money. That's worse than being broke. That's being humiliated. So, what's next for Valerie Kelly? I smiled at the use of my maiden name. I'm buying a house, small, cozy, completely mine. I'm thinking about going back to school, maybe starting that nonprofit I always dreamed about. And Mason. Mason made his choice 8 years ago. He chose them over me, over and over again. The divorce papers were served this morning. My phone rang. Mason's name on the screen. Aren't you going to answer? I declined the call and turned off the phone. I've heard everything he has to say. Any regrets? I thought about the question seriously, about the years of marriage, the dreams we'd shared, the life I'd thought we were building together. You know what? No, no regrets. I finished my coffee and stood up. They showed me exactly who they were, Evan. I just finally decided to believe them. And now? Now I get to find out who I am when I'm not trying to earn someone else's approval. I left the coffee shop and walked into the sunshine, my grandmother's locket warm against my chest. For the first time in 8 years, I had nowhere I had to be, no one I had to please, no role I had to play. I was finally free to write my own story. And it was going to be a good one.